Here we go. Welcome in to the High Noon Rant with me, Pugs Moran. We do it every Monday through Friday at 12 p.m. High noon. What is this? Well, it's a high noon. Comes out. That's the time. It is a stream of consciousness rant where here's what happens. I wake up. I put together a whole slate of stories and breaking news and headlines and buzz and all that stuff. Whatever it is that's trending, whatever it is people are talking about. I compile it all very early in the morning. Oh, the work I put in. And then I sit down here at noon and I run them all down. Here's what happens. We don't go deep in any single topic. This show is designed to get you a quick little, okay, this is what they're talking about. This is what people are saying. And then I offer a little hot take. And we move on to the next. What we don't do here is we don't get into the political weeds. We're not divisive. I don't care about that. I care about truth. And what am I? I don't know. I'm somewhere in the middle. I think I'm like most Americans. I think the people who brand themselves by their political ideology, I think they're weirdos. That's just as much as I want to go into it. You know what I mean? Like the guy who, like, the first thing you know about him is how he vote. That's weird. That is like, no way. That's so tribal and so bizarre. So we don't do that here. And I think that kind of thing has destroyed talk radio in America. So I'm just trying to do a more conversational version where us normal people can just look at things, presented facts, and go, that's crazy, or that's not crazy. Anyway, that's what we do here. What else? Big announcements coming up on today's show. Big things that need to be discussed. The show, as always, is funded these past 3 years by you, the wonderful viewer, streamer, whatever you want to call it. So just if you donate something, that'd be great. All right, let's move on. Let's just get started. Let's run through the show. I got my kid's here. My kid's in the other room. He's been sick. He's been so sick. He's not sick. Like, he hasn't been. He's got a head cold, so he's been stuffy, and so we ain't really done much. We've done pretty much the same amount that we always do. We don't usually do much, but we hung up all weekend. And I made him watch a whole bunch of stuff. We'll talk about that later. I don't know, but he's in the other room, so it's going to be a less flamboyant show because it's weird with my kid in the next room. Let's check in with the chat room. Let's see who we got here. Let's say hi to all my people. I hope you had a nice New Year's Eve. Is the chat room mixed? It is. We got Al in there. Hello, Al. We have Byron in there. We've got Jeff. Peter's here. I wanted to Rhonda, who is usually almost always here first. It was her birthday the other day. I'm getting back into Facebook now. I see the only advantage to visiting Facebook is to find out whose birthday it is. That and like see how your friends' hot wives are aging. That's the only other reason. That's pretty much why I go to Facebook. But I'm back there now, and I wanted to wish a happy birthday to Taronda, who's always first in the chat room. It was her birthday the other day. Hi, Rainey. Rainey's here. All right. Just gotta say hi to people. Come one, come all, as we like to say. Grab your futons, your beanbag chairs, form your soul circle of life. Join hands in a pursuit of positivity and optimism as we move through the day's news. Are you ready? I am. It is the High Noon Rant, a stream of consciousness, unfiltered, just me and my thoughts, for the second day of the month of January, year of our Lord 2024. Boy, I'm not going to get used to that anytime soon. I'll be saying 2023 all week long, probably. I made a concerted effort to make sure I got it right the first time because I think that's important. How many days are left? Well, there's 363 days left in the year. Wait, is this a leap year? Isn't this a leap year? So that would mean what? 364? I don't know. I thought it was a leap year. Maybe it's not. Let's do. I should explain. I haven't explained this yet. How we perform this show. I give it to you in 4 quarters. We look at it like a football game. The first quarter is something we call erstwhile on this day. We run through the events of the day. The second thing is called birthdays. That's what it's called. We go through famous people who are celebrating a birthday today, and we decide, do we like them or not? That's basically it. Then the third quarter, the deads. We go through this little dark log of people who have passed away on this particular day, and we decide whether, based upon our own understanding of Judeo-Christian prerequisites for entrance to either heaven or hell, we decide if this individual who died on this day went to heaven or went to hell. Okay, those are the first 3 quarters. Fourth quarter, that's the bulk of the show. That's where we get into all of the topics and all the headlines and everything that's happening. So if you're ready, let's get started with quarter 1, erstwhile on this day. Erstwhile on this day in 1788, Georgia becomes the 4th state to ratify the United States Constitution. All right. And the first one to secede. But they did the first part of that today in 1788. Erstwhile on this day in 1920, the second Palmer raid is ordered by the United States Department of Justice. This results in 6,000 suspected communists and anarchists being arrested and held without trial. This is what we used to do all the time. So this is why. Do you remember like when Trump was president? And yeah, I mean, we forget. And he did like all of these like real shady things. And the Democrats, like the lefties, were just pearl clutching like, this is not America. Well, I'm here to tell you this is very much America. America and the powers that be have been getting away with whatever they could get away with based upon the era they can do it. The Palmer raids. This was a thing that happened multiple times with the Department of Justice, the FBI, or whatever we want to call it by today. They just went out and arrested people for going to meetings that were about the political ideology of communism. Communists. People just think in a certain way. Do you know communism? We were on their side, first of all, in World War II. You know what we don't seem to have a problem with today? People going to meetings where they talk about Nazism. Nazi rallies and all that, totally protected. You couldn't do it today, is my point. You couldn't do it. You couldn't just send out a bunch of FBI agents to kick down doors of meeting halls to drag American citizens into jail without trial simply for having a different way of looking at the way a government should be run. Crazy. And we got away with it in 1920. This was the second Palmer raid on this day. We just went and rounded people up and threw them in jail. And why? Nobody had telephones. First of all, you couldn't even call somebody, but let alone Twitter, social media, assembling the masses to be outraged. And I'm not, look, my tone is a bit, because I'm so disgusted by the whole story and the history of the Palmer raids that you may think that I'm saying, Twitter and all. No, but honestly, you couldn't do this shit today. Today, which is getting back to my point of all the people pearl clutching, America's falling apart. No, actually, America is working more the way it's supposed to work because we're able to call these things out. Now, in the case of Nazis and some really troubling far-right anti-American views, and some lefty ones as well, but we don't seem to be all that troubled by it. But at least we're calling them out. Back in the day, they just sent jackboot thug police masquerading as, American patriots to kick down doors of civilians' meeting halls. It's troubling. But don't pretend like America is like worse now than it ever was. It was really bad before. We used to have slavery, crying out loud. So Thomas Jefferson never said that. Thomas Jefferson had no clue what was coming. Let's move on. Erstwhile on this day in 1900. This is my favorite story of the day. This is my favorite erstwhile because this is one of the, I don't know. If you're from Chicago, and I am, this is like a point of pride. But anybody from anybody else is going to look at this and go, well, that was a dick move. Yeah, it was, but we think it's funny. So, deal with it. On this day in 1900, an engineering marvel occurred. Engineers figured out a way to reverse the flow of the Chicago River. Here's what happened. Reversing flows of rivers is normal now, but back then it was something that they couldn't really do. But they did it, and they did it by building the Chicago Canal system, which opened or was what was it? No, opened. I don't know, open. Yeah, it opens. Yeah. So it's the first time boats were allowed on. Now, what did this do? The Mississippi River is a great superhighway for, travel for goods and distribution of stuff in this country. It runs from the top of the country all the way down, sort of, slices the country in half. Mississippi River, very important. Great Lakes, very important. Great Lakes didn't really or conveniently connect to the Mississippi River. So what they did in Chicago was they built this system of canals that now allowed you to take stuff from the Great Lakes through the river channels in the Chicago canals into the Mississippi River and go out to the Gulf of Mexico and the rest of the world. So essentially, big part of, transportation, connecting the northern and sending the rest of the world, all of that stuff. Anyway, here's why we really did it. I mean, that's all good, and that's all. Here's why we really did it. All of the people in Chicago were pooping, and all of their poop was going into the river, and the river was shoving it right out onto the beaches of Lake Michigan. That's our drinking water. So the people in Chicago were like, we can't risk this. We can't risk everybody getting listeria or something like that. So we can't be pooping. Damn this river. Damn God for flowing the river into Lake Michigan. So what they did was they reversed it and consequently sent all of Chicago's waste to this day downstream to the great city of St. Louis. That's why St. Louis hates us. St. Louis hates us. We had too much power. What St. Louis complained to the federal government, and the federal government was like, yeah, but, we got to connect the Mississippi River to Lake Michigan. So that's more important. Manifest destiny, eat shit, literally, St. Louis. That was on this day in 1900. They started drinking our poop water because we didn't want to drink our poop water anymore. On this day, erstwhile in 1967, Ronald Reagan, movie actor, becomes governor of California. Whatever happened with that guy? Ronnie Reagan. On this day, erstwhile, in 1974, the United States President Richard Nixon signs a bill lowering the maximum U.S. speed limit to 55 in order to conserve gasoline. The great Sammy Hagar song, I Can't Drive 55. We don't really have that anymore, right? I mean, 55 is just kind of suggested. 55 has always been suggested. Until you get pulled over. Nobody ever got pulled over for 56, 57. It's 65 mostly, right? So they say it was originally enacted 55 for gasoline, but now the whole thing is it saves lives, right? Now it's all about it's all 55 saved lives. Now we're protecting the insurance companies. Freedom. I don't think we should be able to drive. I don't think we should be forced to drive 55 miles an hour. Jesus, look where we are in Texas. I mean, there are stretches of highway in Texas where you should be, it should be the Autobahn. I mean, it's just 100 miles of nothing but armadillos dead on the side of the road. 55. What about when we get electric cars, when everything's electric? We still going to have 55? We still going to be about conserving gasoline? Or at that point, are we just going to have to go, no, it's entirely about the insurance companies and us trying to save them money as they collect a monthly fee from you. You pay your insurance every month, probably never having an accident, but... let's see. That's erstwhile. We're done. Ladies and gentlemen, quarter one is in the books. How about that? Should we do Buonam? They say it's their birthdays. People celebrating birthdays today. Born on this day in 1940, Jim Baker. That's Baker with 2 Ks. He's so awesome. Jim Baker is so awesome. Jim Baker and Tammy Faye, remember them? They were evangelists. He's so awesome because, I mean, I always like to talk about Trump. One of the things that I find most entertaining about Trump is his just rank shamelessness. There's never embarrassed, never, But boy, I'll tell you, Jim Baker, he really set the bar for me as a kid, watching a grown ass adult go, just being totally shameless. Jim Baker, you remember was Jim Baker Fawn Hall? No, Fawn Hall was Oliver North. Jessica Hahn, right? That was Jim Baker. He started, he's Mr. Moral Majority, Mr. Family Man. Tammy Faye was awesome, by the way. Don't get me started on Tammy Faye. But anyway, Jim Baker, he was the real snake oil salesman. Tammy Faye was just dumb and nice and just, thought he was a good guy because he hoodwinked everybody. He hoodwinked her. Even his kids, he hoodwinked his own kids. Jim Baker went to jail for fraud and lost his empire because of, the sexual thing with Jessica Hahn, who was a piece of work herself, but we won't get into that. Victim blaming. Nah, come on. It's more complicated than that, but he lost everything. And then he got out of jail and he started, he just went right back to it. Right back to really shady kind of get rich quick schemes and, selling snake oil on TV and saying that Jesus, sent him these things. He's got an audience and he's able to, I guess I just wish he wasn't so disingenuous and snaky about, he's a bad guy. He's tricking people. Jim Baker, born on this day in 1940, born on this day in 1928. Talk about another bad guy. bad guy tricking people. One of the most powerful politicians in America for a period of time, Illinois Congressman Dan Rostenkowski, chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee for about 20 years. That dude for about 20 years in Washington controlled where every dime was spent. And of course, he went to jail for tax and all kinds of shady business things, the House Post Office scandal. You could look it up if you want to know more. He was a complete piece of garbage. Dan Rostenkowski, born on this day. Not to be outdone, another fine Illinois congressman who, well, you think Rostenkowski was bad. Can we get an amen for Dennis Hastert? Hey, it very possibly could be Epstein Day around here, and so we're all very mindful of child sex exploitation. Dennis Hastert, Speaker of the House, turned out to be a big old molester of kids. Wait, was he the Speaker? Did he resign in disgrace? Is that how we got Paul Ryan? I don't remember exactly how it went down. Oh, no pun intended. But I do know the details of how Hastert went down. Oh, there's the pun. That one very much intended. So Hastert was a wrestling coach. He spent his off time, still very involved in youth wrestling. Apparently he was bisexual, bi-curious, or I don't know what he was. Maybe he was just flat out gay. Who knows? But Hastert molested a whole bunch of his wrestling students and then rose to the Speaker of the House of the United States. That's two having a birthday on the same day. Coinkydink? I don't know. Dan Rostenkowski, disgraced Illinois congressman, one of the most powerful people as chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, born on this day, disgraced. Dennis Hastert, Illinois congressman, rose to the position of Speaker of the House of Representatives, molested a whole bunch of kids at his wrestling camps, born on this day. Coinkydink? I don't know. That's weird. Born on this day in 1947, happy birthday to Jack Hanna of the Columbus Zoo. We grew up watching him on TV. He was always the dimwit who brought out monkeys that he didn't seem to have full control over on Letterman. Remember him? Jack Hanna? He was kind of a dimwit. That was kind of his thing, but nice, entertaining, seemed very lovable. Always wanted to go to the Columbus Zoo. Why? Because I wanted to go to Columbus? No, because Jack Hanna made it seem like one of the best zoos in the country, and I was very into zoos as a kid. Jack Hanna, he's sick now. Did he die? No, but he's sick now. So happy birthday, Jack Hanna. Born on this day in 1947, a legend here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Actually, not just here. He played a couple other places. I think he played with the Redskins as well. He is the father of Grant Hill. It is Calvin Hill, Dallas Cowboy Calvin Hill, celebrating a birthday today, born on this day in 1947. Born on this day 20 years later. Coincidence? Tia Carrera. Tia Carrera from Wayne's World, born on this day in 1967. She was a thing for every white suburban boy in like 1992. I don't know, when did Wayne's World come out? Remember her? Remember seeing her? And everybody was like, where did she come from? We have never seen anything like this before. She was like, she was something. Tia Carrera, ladies and gentlemen. Happy birthday, Tia Carrera from Wayne's World. Born on this day in 1967. Born on this day in 1968, Cuba Gooding Jr. I don't know who Cuba Gooding was. Is his dad somebody? I think his dad might have been somebody. I think his dad might have been like a jazz man or something like that. Cuba Gooding Jr. Happy birthday. I don't have any. Does anybody have any hot takes on Cuba Gooding Jr.? He's mid. He's not like, dude, Cuba Gooding Jr.'s got a new movie out. We got to go. That's not a thing. All right, moving on. Happy birthday, Cuba Gooding Jr. And born on this day in 1971, Taye Diggs. American actor, singer, handsome man. Taye Diggs is a very handsome man. Wasn't he a model first? Or was he just an actor? And he's probably got to be a model, but whatever. Born on this day in 1975, one half of my favorite Hollywood couple, Dax Shepard. Does a fantastic, born in 75, does a fantastic podcast. Armchair expert, Dax Shepard. God, is he a great interviewer. He is so smart, and he is such a good and decent person that his interview style they're funny, they're interesting, very interesting guy. Dax Shepard. I don't know how great of an actor he is. Maybe B-list. He's married to Kristen Bell. She gets a lot of work, so they're okay there. but he is a damn fine podcast host. He is terrific. Happy birthday, Dax Shepard. Armchair expert. Wakes up every morning with Kristen Bell laying. I mean, life could be worse. Born on this day in 1983. How about happy birthday to Anthony Carrigan? Anthony Carrigan, do you know who he is? He's an American actor. He's awesome because he's NoHo Hank from Barry. I don't know if you guys watch the Max or HBO Max, whatever, series Barry, but NoHo Hank is... I don't know if he's Barry's nemesis / best friend, but they start out on the opposite. I don't know, whatever it is. NoHo Hank. Anthony Carrigan's a terrific actor. He's got that powder disease, you know, where you look pale and you can't grow hair or whatever that is. I don't know what that is, but he's got that, and he's very memorable because of it. He's a very interesting looking actor. So be on the lookout for Anthony Carrigan. He's really good. Happy birthday, NoHo Hank from Barry, born on this day in 1983. All right, now is the point where we go into quarter three. This is where we talk about people who have died on this day. We run through a small list, not always a big list. We usually do about 3 or 4. We decide whether they're in heaven or hell based on our understanding of it. Dead on this day in 1953, Gucci. Yeah, that guy, Gucci, the guy who started Gucci. Italian businessman and fashion designer, founder of Gucci. He, as I understood it, was just a leather shoe salesman. And then, like, you know, his shoes became popular, but he was still just kind of like a leather shoe salesman. He wasn't like a big fashion D-bag. Those were his kids that came after him that turned like Gucci into like this big thing. So we're going to, because I watched House of Gucci, all of them people are going to hell. But I think somebody's got to be, you know, so we're going to put Gucci, the old man who was just a shoemaker. He was like Geppetto, right? Putting him in heaven. That's who I picture. But I could be wrong. He might have been the a-hole who started the whole thing, but I don't know. I don't think he was. He was born in 1881. I think this is the original. Born on or dead on this day in 1990. We're deciding whether or not this man is going to heaven or hell. Ladies and gentlemen, dead on this day, Alan Hale Jr. Think about that. You know the name. You've seen it a million times. Especially if you're Gen X. Yeah, he's the skipper. He's the skipper from Gilligan's Island, Alan Hale Jr. There are a lot of stories about Alan Hale Jr., the skipper, who was a journeyman actor in Hollywood, never really, you know, made it as a big star or anything, but he was a jobber. He got work, he got roles, he paid his bills. And then he got Gilligan's Island, and he sort of became this, like, you know, person that people knew, Alan Hale Jr. So he decided to capitalize on it because he wasn't making big Hollywood money. Nobody on Gilligan's Island was making huge money. It was, you know, kind of a people. First of all, people in TV back then didn't make huge money unless you owned it. That's why a lot of those shows were like Desilu or Danny Thomas, or, you know what I mean? Those people owned those shows and they made all the money, but not like Alan Hale Jr. So what he did was he opened up a fish restaurant. I think it was in Marina Del Rey, because he's the skipper from Gilligan's Island. So he opened a fish place, and he used to be there every night. Alan Hale Jr., businessman who opened up this fish restaurant based upon his, you know, notoriety as the skipper from Gilligan's Island. Alan Hale Jr. used to show up every night dressed as the skipper. So yeah, he's going to heaven, man. That dude leaned into it. He got it. He wasn't like too cool to be the skipper. No, he had a fish restaurant and knew people wanted the skipper. So he showed up. He didn't have an ego. That was just a role I played. You know, I've also played Shakespeare in community theater. He was self-aware enough to know that nobody wanted that shit from him. So in 1988, he died in 1990. In 1988, 1990, 1989, you could go to this fish restaurant in Marina Del Rey in Los Angeles, and the dude that sat you would be a dude dressed as the skipper, and it was the skipper. So yeah, he's going to heaven. Alan Hale Jr. Just for being like such a cool, self-aware guy that understood that people love them as the skipper. That's what they want. He's trying to sell cod, for crying out loud. Come on. If you're going to buy a piece of cod based on the fact that you might see me dressed in my blue shirt and skipper hat and white pants, please bring it on. That is just Alan Hale. He's in heaven. All right. Also, dead on this day in 2019. These are 3. On this day in 2019. I'm going to give you 3 in a row, man. Jeez Louise, man. Wow. This is huge Gen X deaths. 3 of them on this day in the year 2019. Are you ready? First of all, Daryl Dragon. Who's Daryl Dragon? Well, he's like the least known of these guys. Probably not the least known. He's actually probably the most successful of all of these people. But for me, I think he's the least Dragon because we don't at least known because we don't know him as Daryl Dragon. We know him as the Captain from Captain and Tennille. Daryl Dragon, dead on this day of 2019. He's going to hell. Can I name a Captain and Tennille song? I don't know if I can name a Captain and Tennille song off the top of my head. You know why? Because the great Captain and Tennille song from my childhood wasn't a Captain and Tennille song. It was Elton John and Kiki D. That Don't Go Breaking My Heart. I always think that's a Captain and Tennille song, and it's not. And it's like the best. Because like when I go, oh, Captain and Tennille, man, first of all, their best song, Don't Go Breaking. See, it's like their best song, but it's not their song. Could have been, though. I don't know what Captain and Tennille did. Captain and Tennille music kind of, in my mind, clashes together with the Carpenters. Anyway, I'm going to put Daryl Dragon in heaven because he was married to Toni Tennille, who, by the way, check the tape. She was cute. Oh, my God. I never noticed how cute Toni Tennille of the Captain and Tennille was until, I was like in my 30s and I see a video on VH1 or something. I'm like, wow, she's cute. All right. So he was the dude. He just wore a captain's hat and played keyboards and she sang. That was their whole bit. And they made a lot of money. And now I'm putting Daryl Dragon in heaven because he just sat there and watched his wife be super talented and he cashed checks. All right. Dead on this day also in 2019. Here's one preemptively putting him into heaven because I love this guy. I love his brother. Bob Einstein. Bob Einstein died on this day in 2019. He's, of course, Super Dave Osborne. He is, of course, the brother of Albert Brooks, the great Albert Brooks. Bob Einstein died on this day in 2019. He's also, I always say Super Dave Osborne because that was really impactful to me as a child. Seeing this satire of Evel Knievel, you have to understand, for my generation, Evel Knievel, 8-year-old boys in 1978, 8-year-old boys worshipped Muhammad Ali, and Evel Knievel. That was it. They were our two. So when Super Dave Osborne started showing up on TV as a Evel Knievel type who always wrecked in really hysterical ways, oh my God, did we love him. But he's also Funkhauser, from Curb Your Enthusiasm, which pound for pound, if you just go on YouTube and watch Best of Funkhauser, Curb Your Enthusiasm, he's hysterical. He is hysterical. So with Daryl Dragon, we're going to bet that Bob Einstein, Super Dave Osborne went to heaven. All right, now this next guy is really awesome. Hold on. Hold on. Sorry about that. Okay. Now this next one, I think we were talking about this the other day on one of the shows that I was on. We were talking about the Von Erichs and how the Von Erichs were so big here in Texas. And gods, they are absolute gods among people of my generation who grew up. And, as kids, we all liked wrestling to some degree. I didn't get crazy into wrestling. I kind of got off at about 12 or 13. But, I was there for the golden age, the rise, the formation of the WWF. Now the WWE. Anyway, my point is this. I was talking about the Von Erichs and how I didn't know who the Von Erichs were. I had never heard of the Von Erichs, being raised in the Midwest, being raised in Chicago. My first understanding of the Von Erichs was in the early days of the WWF. I remember Kerry Von Erich as a WWF wrestler, but even that wasn't I remember Hulk Hogan more and Andre the Giant. You know what I mean? He was sort of just like another wrestler. So when I came down here and they were like, I'm like, wow, okay. And then I realized something. The wrestlers that I enjoyed when I was little, nobody down here knows who they are. I mean, save for a couple of them. But wrestling, before Vince McMahon created the WWF, which was essentially him going around the country and buying up all of these regional wrestling circuits, the wrestlers that people in the South grew up with are not the same wrestlers that people in the Midwest grew up with, are not the same wrestlers that the people on the East Coast grew up with, are not the same wrestlers. Now, they would wrestle, they would a guy in a show in Florida might hire a big name guy from the Midwest, or Milwaukee, Chicago, Minnesota, St. Louis, Detroit circuit. Somebody like that might come down for a one-off. I think Ric Flair did that a lot here with World Class Wrestling, which was the Von Erichs thing here. In Chicago, we had something called ACW, which was run by Vern Gagne. Who is this? You may not even, you know what? You know who Vern Gagne is? Vern Gagne to me is who Fritz Von Erich is to you guys. Like the big name, the godfather, the daddy of the circuit. So maybe you don't know him because of that regionalization. But ACW, the local Chicago wrestling, or it wasn't even local Chicago, it was Midwestern, but they were always at the International Amphitheater in Chicago. So we considered it that. ACW wrestling had a voice, had a guy who did all of the play-by-play, who was the star of it, the center of attraction of it. And that was a man who died on this day in 2019. And I think we all know him, wrestling fans, Mean Gene Okerlund. I used to love, this was before he was Mean Gene. As a matter of fact, I remember when he became Mean Gene, because we had in Midwestern wrestling, like the guys from the Midwest, Vince McMahon, when he started buying stuff up, before he bought up entire promotions, he raided promotions. So he came into ACW and he raided like all of the young wrestlers and Gene Okerlund. He took Gene Okerlund and said, Gene, you can get out of this dumpy lit. I'm going to put a national TV show on and you're going to be a national voice of wrestling. So of course he took it. But he became, I think it was Jesse Ventura. I think like the guys like Jesse Ventura and who are the ones that I remember before WWF? Jesse Ventura was a big one. Randy Macho Man Savage. The Poffos in general, they were big. That's who the Savages are. The Poffos, they're a wrestling family. Downers Grove, Illinois. Yeah. So anyways, it was Jesse Ventura who called him Mean Gene. Anyway, I loved Mean Gene. I thought Mean Gene was awesome. He was pretty much the only reason that I watched wrestling. He was such a great, when he was a young man, he was funny. I mean, we all know him as like old Mean Gene, and I guess young man. I guess he was probably in his 40s when I was watching him, but it was different. Mean Gene is going to heaven. Daryl Dragon, Bob Einstein, and Mean Gene Okerlund are all getting into heaven. They all died on this day in 2019. All right. Whew, there we go. Let's move forward now into quarter 4, and this is where I will remind you, if you are so inclined, drop a little something. Tip the show. We didn't make it for the second month in a row. I cannot continue to do the show if it's going to actually cost me money. It was all right when I could justify doing this show. I could justify doing it if it wasn't costing anything and I was just sort of, living on other revenue streams. But this is now the second month in a row that it's cost something. So I don't know. And by the way, we got a lot of stuff going on. So we didn't make it last month. So this is that month, put the end of the month, first early, because remember, I don't pay my bills until at least the 4th or 5th. So that's where we are. If you want to drop a little something, it'd be greatly appreciated. We are $300 short. We're not going to make that. I'm throwing that out there just to show you how far away from our goal we were this month. And it's because it's Christmas. And, people are, people have more important things than this show to support. But thank you very much. And anyone that still wants to get on there, you please drop in and we'll keep we'll start tomorrow. If we do get any tips, and we haven't gotten tips in a while, but if we do get some tips, we will keep a total and I'll thank you guys. But that's where we are. Okay, so let's move forward now. Let's talk about all of the things. Quarter 4. These are all of the things that are happening in the world today. We start with Israel, but really, I don't know. We might not be starting with Israel every day anymore because there's not a whole lot there. There is a whole full-blown sea war going on in the sea there. One of our big battleships, though, American battleships, has pulled out of the region. They say it's an attempt to tamp down the tensions before something crazy happens. We're fighting these Yemeni Houthi rebels. The Houthis are like a group of terrorists who are from Yemen, and they are supporting the people of Gaza by attempting to blockade whatever. I don't even know if it's a blockade. Whatever they're doing is they're attacking those perceived to be supporters of the Zionist Israeli state. It's a terrible, terrible thing happening over there. Excuse me. The big news that we'll probably spend a little bit of time here on, because there are two stories attached here. It's the earthquake in Japan. Did you guys see this? Was this? I don't know if this happened on New Year's Eve. What is the time difference there? It either happened on New Year's Day or New Year's Eve, but there was a big earthquake in Japan. Look, we're not talking thousands. It's not like a Kurdistan earthquake where it's like the death toll is up to 10,000. It's Japan. They're pretty much, they got good architecture there. They got all kinds of regulations to make sure the buildings meet codes and expectations for, anything. Typhoons, tsunamis, earthquakes. But there is a death toll. I believe it's 55. Okay, now we're looking at least 55. Powerful earthquakes leave at least 55 dead and destroy buildings along Japan's western coast. Oh, okay. So here, we'll look at this. Apparently, we got some video that we can check out. We always like to see video of things shaking. Let's see. I don't like earthquakes, man. I've never been in one. I've never been in one. I might have been in one, but I didn't feel it. They're like, there was an earthquake this morning. I was like, really? I was in Vegas once. Did you feel the earthquake? I'm like, nah. No, it's Vegas. I figure everything's rocking. All right, let's see. Here, a little bit of video for you from the earthquake. Again, at least 55 people have died in this earthquake in Japan. Boom. Let's watch a little bit of video. All right, here we go. What's this? All right, there you go. I always love this shot. I always love the shot of the abandoned office with paper falling off desks. There you go. That's how we know it was bad. The newsroom. Although that does look pretty, that's pretty shaky. That's not, you're going to feel that. All right, now you see a puff of smoke where a building collapses. Yeah, there it is. Left side, you see the smoke now coming. All right, let's see here. A series of powerful earthquakes that hit Western Japan have left at least, we'll get rid of that now. Series of powerful earthquakes that hit Western Japan have left at least 55 people dead and damaged thousands of buildings, vehicles, and boats. Aftershocks continue to shake Ishikawa Prefecture and nearby areas a day after a magnitude 7.6 slammed the area. Damage was so great that it could not immediately be assessed. Japanese media reports said tens of thousands of homes have been destroyed. Oh boy. Okay. So keep a good thought for the folks in Japan, but thankfully it's I was going to say a smart, evolved Western nation, but they're not. They're an Eastern nation, but they are smart and evolved. And the damages and the death toll and all that stuff mitigated because, they're modern in Japan. Not like, when these things happen in Turkey. Erdogan's shitting in a gold toilet, but, half his population is living in rickety-ass buildings on the side of mountains. Also, another situation coming out of Japan. This one. Hold on. Boom, let me make sure we get this. There was a really bad situation in an airport in Japan. A passenger plane with how many people? Let me see how many people were on board this thing. Jet Inferno, Haneda Airport fire. At least 5 are dead as passenger plane smashes into Coast Guard jet and explodes before 379 people are rescued. 379 people were on board this commercial airplane when it was struck by a Japanese Coast Guard jet that was taking off at the airport. So here's how this went down. So the commercial airliner was actually landing at the airport. I'll get you a picture of this. The commercial airliner was landing at the airport. Boop. I'll watch this video now. I'll tell you the story.
Hey guys, we are giving out a ton of these DeWalt samples today.
Cool.
Just fill out our quick 2-minute.
Fantastic. There we go. It goes bad. All right, so that's the explosion. If you can see this one more time. All right. So here. So right out here, this is where the explosion is going to occur. Let me make sure we all see this. Okay, so wait, where are we? Right out here is where the explosion is going to occur. This passenger jet has just landed. Okay, now it's taxiing towards the gate. a Coast Guard, a Japanese Coast Guard jet is taking off as this one is landing. They collide. Somehow they got crossed up. They collide. The seriously sad thing is that the Coast Guard jet was rushing to help survivors of the earthquake. This was like a mad scramble that the Coast Guard was getting into. They were trying to, direct their resources to the appropriate places struck most violently by the earthquake. And it just so happens that this tragedy happened. So you're going to see the explosion again. It happens out here. Now, 379 people on board this plane escaped unharmed. Well, actually, I shouldn't say unharmed because I don't entirely know that. I'm sure there's a few people that'll be filing lawsuits with twisted ankles and my back and, all kinds of things. I burned myself. But they're alive. It's a miraculous turn of events here because they should have all been. Look at this plane explode. Everyone gets out. All 5 on board. The Coast Guard plane died. The Coast Guard, they're all dead. People on this plane are not. Here we go. Let's let this play out. Here it is. Boom. See that? 2 planes just collided. All of these people got out safely. Holy cow. Here comes the boom. Here it is, taxiing, boom. Here it is, taxiing, and boom. Everyone got out alive. Folks, this is what I say, my whole thing about airplane travel. If this had happened in 1988, nobody would have gotten out alive. They still hadn't worked all of the bugs out of air travel. My argument is that I don't believe air travel was safe until the year 2000. I know you're saying, well, the year 2001, we had more plane crashes in this country. Yeah, but that was terror related. That's different. I'm talking about mechanical failure. I'm talking about getting on a plane and going to see grandma in Sacramento and then having a 50-cent lug nut snap at 30,000 feet and your wing falls off, right? Those are mechanical issues that I believe it probably took about 50, 60 years of flying 1 million people every day all around the world to basically troubleshoot every possible scenario that could go wrong. I believe airplane travel mechanically is pretty much as safe as crossing the street is today. Terrorism, that's a whole different thing. That's about national security and we got to do other things. But that's not like I'm afraid to get on a plane because the wing might fall off. And that was a big part of my life in the 80s and 90s as a young man. I was afraid you'd get on a plane and you'd be like, oh, God, I hope the wing stays on. That's not a problem anymore. And now look at this. They've obviously game planned for a scenario where the entire plane is engulfed in flames, and they figured out a way to get 379 people off safely. Congratulations. That is truly amazing. Best thoughts go out for the lost lives in the Coast Guard. Because Coast Guard, they aren't worried about. They were just, military guys. They weren't wearing seatbelts probably. Let's go. And they were just, that's a terrible thing though. All right, here's not a terrible thing. Here's a really interesting. Hi, Jen. Jen Hernandez saying hi and Happy New Year. By the way, Happy New Year to everybody. Oh, Adam said I saw the Iron Claw in that movie was badass. Yeah, I almost went to go see it this weekend. Was going to go see it with a friend. Well, my kid's been sick all weekend, so we didn't see it. It's an interesting story. I mean, just from that standpoint, it's a fascinating story. Some of the reviews have been a little bit critical, but that's like wrestling nerd reviews. Like they didn't go into the. It's like it's a movie. This is for people who maybe don't know who they are, not for diehards who live in Denton. This is for people from, Michigan who, like me, who grew up, I wasn't really familiar with them. It's a terrific story. So I imagine it's going to be an interesting movie. I can't wait to see it. All right. So here's the thing that I'm most interested that's happening today. We going to get us some of them there. Epstein names, maybe? Who are some Epstein names going to be released today? Have they been released already? I don't know. You guys tell me in the chat room. You guys, where's my producers? Where's April? Well, you're supposed to, I don't have my TV out here, so I'm not watching the news as it breaks. So if we've got the list of names, I'll stop what I'm about to do and I'll go and I'll find the names because, whew, we all know about Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein, rich guy, a lot of connected friends, rich guy. Billionaire. I don't know if he was a billionaire. Was he a billionaire? He managed billions in funds. Also, just Hall of Fame child molester. Just as far, you got the top tier of the child molesters. You've got, of course, you've got your Jimmy Saviles in England. He's probably the gold standard. Now, I know a lot of Americans are like, we're number one. We produce the number one monstrous child sex molester of all time. No, I still think it's Jimmy Savile. Jimmy Savile, like Epstein was just a guy with money who had access to powerful, high-profile people. Jimmy Savile was a powerful, high-profile person in his own right. I wonder if they knew each other. I don't know. Anyway, did Google Jimmy Savile if you don't know who he is. So Jeffrey Epstein is dead, of course. There's a whole other thing there that you can go into. I don't know if you follow that, but there's a bit of a curious story about how he died. But that's not what this rabbit hole is about today. This rabbit hole is specifically about a bunch of names of associates of Jeffrey Epstein that have been redacted in court proceedings, specifically the court proceeding out of Minnesota between Virginia Jeffrey, who was the victim who went up against Prince Andrew, or Jeffrey, that girl. So they settled out of court, $12 million, they think, is what she got for that whole thing. But during discovery and during the investigation of that trial, a whole bunch of names were mentioned. Now, how were these names mentioned? Not like, and then so-and-so diddled me. No, that's not how they were mentioned. They were mentioned in date books, in diary logs. Business people have secretaries who keep, records of this. So if Jeffrey Epstein had a meeting with, Bob Toms from Bear Stearns, he would be on there. Now, because of the volatile nature of these charges in this story, when it went to court, when it went on the Prince Andrew civil trial thing, when that went to court, where Virginia Jeffrey was looking for a settlement, and she got one, 12 million. All of those names were redacted. All of the names that were compiled in the investigation of that case were redacted. This is not a list of people who had sex with 10-year-olds on Lolita Island. It might be. I can't wait to see the Venn diagram when this whole thing is over, because there might be a whole lot of overlap. But as much as it bothers me, because I think that he's just a complete monster, and I want everybody that participated with him in this monstrous activity, I want them all called on the carpet. I don't give a shit if they're a guy who stars in my favorite movie or somebody I may have once voted for. I don't give a shit about that. I want to know who was involved in this secret little cabal of sex molesters. Let's see the names. We don't have those names. Those are not the names. These are just the people who did business with Jeffrey Epstein, who had, financial stake in his company or whatever. These are not necessarily. Now, it also has some people who took flights on his jet. But again, to a regular person, that seems like, oh, well, he flew on his jet, so he's got to be a child molester. No, man, not necessarily. There is going to be a list that we're going to see. There's going to be a list of people who are going to be outed. But this is not necessarily it. This is a list I want to see, though. I want to know who I need to look down my nose at, because these people who were doing business with Jeffrey Epstein, especially in the years post 2009 and 2005, when he had already been outed as a sex offender, a registered sex offender. I want to know who these people, I think these people's names need to be made public. The people who were still doing business with this guy, the people who were still empowering this guy to continue his life of, just unchecked immorality. And that's what he was. Just a gross guy. I would also like to know why. A disgraced former Secretary of Labor, what was his name? Do you remember the guy? He was a prosecutor in Miami who had Jeffrey Epstein in 2005 dead to rights, and he decided to give him a sweetheart deal. The sweetheart deal, 12 months. Here's part of the sweetheart, 12 months in prison, of which Jeffrey Epstein was allowed to spend 12 hours a day on work release. Yeah. He was only there 12. He only had to go to sleep there. Oh, by the way, work release, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. So he was allowed to do that. Now, you might say, well, Pugs, that's something that, a lot of criminals are allowed to do, work release, especially white collar crime. Yeah, it's not a white collar crime. He's a violent sexual offender, and it is right there in the laws of the state of Florida that say that sex offenders are exempt from work release. But that didn't apply to Jeffrey Epstein. So that all goes down, and how does this guy get rewarded? This guy gets named to Trump's cabinet. He becomes the Secretary of Labor, the guy who completely gave him this sweetheart deal. Of course, he has to resign in disgrace. So we know this guy. Well, actually, we don't. What's his name? I don't know. I can't even think of his name right now, but that's some bullshit. Also, do you know that Jeffrey Epstein wasn't housed in prison when he was down there? He was housed in a private jail at what was known as the something county stockade. It was almost like an old-timey kind of jail that was used for, this is how we used to put people in jail. Well, they put Jeffrey Epstein in there, and he had TVs, and he had a couch, and he had a bed, like a big bed, a normal bed. Oh, also, door was never locked. Jeffrey Epstein was never locked in his. So this is why I want to see these names. It wasn't like it shocked anybody in 2019 when the FBI arrested Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein had been involved in this stuff, well, going back to the 1980s, but he had been on police radar since charges in Florida in 2005, for which he was convicted, but, was he? I mean, just the most shocking thing about that is, and then in New York, also, there was a situation in New York a few years later, a violation of his parole. Cyrus Vance, who was the Southern District of New York top guy. Cyrus Vance worked out a deal where even though Jeffrey Epstein was in violation of his parole, part of it was, you know what? He just had to register as a sex offender, and then he had to just check in with a sex counselor, a sex offense counselor, every 90 days. Violation of this, missing your check-in with your counselor, means you are remanded right back to jail, young man. Do not collect $200. Do not pass go. Jeffrey Epstein never once checked in. Never once. Cyrus Vance. So we got the guy down there in Florida whose name we know. We got the guy in New York, Cyrus Vance, whose name we know. Who else helped empower this guy? Check this out. I like this little fun fact from Jeffrey Epstein. On June 18th, 2010, Epstein's former house manager, Alfredo Rodriguez, was sentenced to 18 months incarceration. More. He got more than Jeffrey Epstein. His little house manager, probably a little Cuban man, who just works there in the garden and all that, and he's, just a little working man, got 18 months. Jeffrey Epstein didn't get 18 months. I think he got 12. This dude got 18 months. Why? He was sentenced to 18 months incarceration after being convicted on an obstruction charge for failing to turn over to police and subsequently trying to sell a journal in which he had, in which he had recorded Epstein's activities. FBI Special Agent Christina Pryor reviewed the material and agreed it was information that would have been extremely useful in investigating and prosecuting the case. Now, this dude, right? So let's spend a moment talking about this guy, Alfredo Rodriguez, who is his house manager. Apparently, he saw all of this crappy stuff going on, and he started doing his own investigation. And he started detailing people who were coming and going, and he's got this information. And the police and the FBI demanded it. And his story is, I wasn't giving it to them. These are the people who have been covering this up. So what he did was he went to news media and he started peddling it. And he was going to give it to news media, and then he got arrested. So where is this guy's investigation? They put him in jail for 18 months because he didn't trust the police. Well, you got to trust the institutions. You mean the institutions that gave him an open door, Jeffrey Epstein, an open door policy in prison? You mean that institution, the one that allows him to spend up to 12 hours a day, 6 days a week outside in the wild as a sex offender? I wouldn't trust the police in Palm Beach County either. So he went to jail for 18 months. We got him. It's amazing. It's amazing. This Jeffrey Epstein story is amazing. And again, the list of names that we say, look, there's probably a Venn diagram that we will all have access to at some point. But right now, we just don't have those facts. Today or tomorrow or at some point this week, we may in fact get a list of names that were name checked during the investigation into the Virginia Jeffrey case back in Minnesota. It was a civil case. It wasn't a criminal prosecution case. And it named a lot of people who Jeffrey Epstein had business dealings with. Because again, he was an apex predator in the child sex game, but he was also a businessman. I mean, he wasn't just always doing that. He probably, is his doorman, responsible because he met with his doorman, right? He had other people. Just because somebody crossed paths with Jeffrey Epstein and may have taken a meeting trying to get access to the billions of dollars that he owned or that he managed, just because somebody took that meeting doesn't mean that they are also a child molester. But again, let's wait for the I almost just called it a Venn diagram. We'll see the overlap. But I want to see these names. I want to see these names because goes back to these people who are named today. They're not completely innocent. These are people who were dealing with a man who everyone knew was a 2-time child sex offender. And everybody whispered about his love of young girls and all that. So who are these people? All right. We're sitting on that. Epstein. See, we didn't even go into the fact that he was murdered. We didn't even go into that. We all know what happened. We all know that this guy who was facing life in prison was about to make a deal where he was going to tell the names of everybody. He had cameras in all of his... When the police in 2005 raided his... He had a place on, he had a place in Palm Beach right next to Mar-a-Lago. He was a big Mar-a-Lago guy. Anyway, when police raided that, they found hidden cameras everywhere. And then a reporter for the New York Post who was doing a story on the great mansions of New York back in like 2004 or something, she was brought into Jeffrey Epstein's mansion, which is a famous mansion in New York City. And she was led into a room that she described as the media room. Now, we all know what a media room. It's got a couch and a TV, and we watch TV, and you leave us alone in there. But no, that's not what Jeffrey Epstein had. Jeffrey Epstein had a room, a secret room behind a wall that showed there were cameras all over the house, and there were people watching the cameras. The cameras were in bathrooms. He had toilet cams. He had bedroom cams. Okay? So this was in the New York place. And he also supposedly had all of this stuff on Lolita Island there, where, he frolicked with his teenage victims. Now, why was he doing this? They say that he was doing all of this, that he had been recording for years and years and years because a part of his job, yes, he was a money manager, but also if you wanted to bang a 12-year-old from Eastern Russia, he could procure that for you. He was the guy above and beyond the money management and all that. He was the guy who could do that for you. And because he was doing that for some very high profile, very wealthy and connected people, he decided that as an insurance policy, Jeffrey Epstein decided that he would start recording. So these tapes are out there. We know the cameras existed. We found the cameras. He was going to out the whole thing to save his ass because he was behind bars and looking at life in prison. Probably still would have gotten life in prison, but it would have been a much better deal for him. But that didn't happen. The most highly guarded prisoner in America somehow was allowed to hang himself. The most vulnerable guy in America. I mean, the rest of us, it's not just about guys who run the jails being like, well, we need to protect this guy because he's a child molester, and you know what other prisoners do to child molesters. We need to protect him. Okay, there's that. But that's not even what I'm talking about. I'm talking about what this guy knew. I'm talking about people outside the prison walls who might want him dead. He was a very handle with care prisoner. And somehow they let his camera go on the fritz, the camera that monitored what he was doing in the jail cell, the most high profile, most, as I said, security-wise, vulnerable prisoner in America. They allowed his camera to go dark. And in that moment, he knew when the camera, so Jeffrey Epstein also just happened to know that the camera had gone dark. So that's when he hung himself. Come on, man. And the guards got fired and the guards got in trouble. But come on, go deeper. Anyway, that's what we're waiting on today. Jeffrey Epstein, that's why he is trending. David Tepper is also trending. This is a fun one. I love this. David Tepper is just oh my God. First of all, you know how I feel about the rich. You don't even have to be Jeffrey Epstein for me to just not like you if you're a billionaire. And David Tepper is a billionaire owner of the Carolina Panthers, and he is not having fun. He is. Okay, so first of all, David Tepper is a lunatic. I mean, could you imagine? I mean, I have a problem with the owner of my football team because the owner of my football team is a 101-year-old sweet little old lady who is just like, go Bears, right? And you know what I want? I want Mark Cuban. I want a billionaire who wants to win. Now, be careful what you wish for, because that's what Carolina has. Even Jerry Jones, for I would trade an ownership that is more overly involved in the way that Jerry Jones is here with the Cowboys than one that is just, we love football. Like the old lady that I got running my team. She doesn't care. I knew both Newt Rockne and Red Grange. She's a wonderful woman. And I'm going to be heartbroken when she dies. But also, can we sell the team now? Can we sell the team to Bezos? Can it be the Bezos Bears? That's what we want. We want a billionaire who is going to pump money into this team. So that's what they got down there in Carolina. And be careful what you wish for, because with a billionaire comes a $1 billion ego. And this dude, first of all, he knows football better than anyone else, which, maybe he does, because I always say football is a game we all been watching for 20 plus years. We either have an aptitude for understanding what's happening, or we just watch the people run into each other and go, I like football. But most of us who watch, we develop over the years an understanding of how the game is played. So I can see how one might scoff their nose. Well, I can see how one might scoff at, say, the experts in their fancy suits on morning ESPN telling us that they watch football better than us and that their opinion of what they saw is more important because they are on ESPN as experts. I hate that. So maybe that's what this David Tepper guy is doing. But David Tepper has made one big dick tripping mistake after another as owner of the Carolina Panthers. First and foremost, last year, the Carolina Panthers were not good. So they decided to go all in on a quarterback. This guy, apparently David Tepper, he watched all the ESPN bullshit and he listened to all the other experts. And they were talking about how Bryce Young is generational and you got to get Bryce Young, and Bryce Young is this. I know about all this because I'm in Chicago. We actually had the number 1 pick. We also had a developing quarterback in Justin Fields. And I'm like, no, I don't want Bryce Young. No. So we convinced the Carolina Panthers that they wanted Bryce Young. And it didn't take all that much convincing because David Tepper, the owner of the Panthers, is a moron. And he just, the NFL fleece of the century. My God, we're going to have top 3 round draft picks until 2026 because of this deal. Because, see, now we've got their pick. Anyway, point is this. He gave up their best player. He gave up all of their draft picks. He gave up their number 1 pick this year. Carolina's number 1 pick. Their first round pick in the upcoming NFL draft. Carolina's number 1 pick isn't theirs. It's Chicago's. It's ours. Because we gave them the number 1 pick last year. Because we didn't want Bryce Young. Because we knew he was tiny and played in a system. We understood that. Not David Tepper. He's a genius. Against the newly hired coach, Frank Reich, who they brought down from Indianapolis. Frank Reich, former Buffalo Bills backup. Awesome dude. Tepper brings in Reich. We're going to draft a quarterback, so we're going to bring in Reich. Reich did not want Bryce Young. Turns out Reich wanted C.J. Stroud. And now here we have the luxury of a year of NFL football to say which one was right. Well, Frank Reich was right. C.J. Stroud was the better quarterback than Bryce Young. I felt that too. I said that too. I was a C.J. Stroud guy. But then again, I'd seen more Ohio State than I had Alabama. So, and I was in the tank for Justin Fields, and Justin loves C.J., so, you know. So David Tepper forces Frank Reich to give up everything and then draft Bryce Young, the quarterback that the former quarterback who is now coach didn't want, because he's like, yeah, I can't really teach him. So that all went to shit. Carolina has a terrible season this year. Their first round pick from last year that they gave up to the Chicago Bears is now the number 1 overall pick in the draft. And lo and behold, there is a generational quarterback out there, or so the experts say. And, you know, they've got nothing. They're the worst team. The Carolina Panthers are the worst team in football, and they don't even have a first-round pick. So he's angry. So why is he in trouble? Because at the game on Sunday, David Tepper was seen and filmed taking his drink from the skybox and tossing it in the face or back of the head of an angry Carolina Panthers fan. And I'm going to show it to you right now because this is really we're going to talk a little bit about what this is and we'll get into it. But first, before I do that, you should see it. So here we go. Let's see if I can pull this up. Hold on. Give it a second. Give it a second. Yeah, here it is. Oh, for crying out loud. I don't want the Instagram. Okay. Oh, maybe I'm not going to. After all of that, now I'm not going to. No, I'm not going to be able to show it to you. It's out there. I'll get it. Hold on. All right. All right, we'll do this one. There you go. All right, so let's watch this, and now we'll break it down, and we'll figure out exactly how we should feel about it. Boom. Boom. Here he is. Somber music, like. All right, let's look at this. So I don't know which one of these dudes Tepper is. Let's just let it play. All right, so down here, apparently these fans are heckling and, screaming, Panthers suck! And the owner of the Panthers is right here behind him. There it is. All right, this dude right here. See him? He just threw it. Now he flips it down. He's like, yeah, you shut up. You're criticizing my team. I'm a billionaire and you're poor. And he just throws his drink on him. He throws it down and he storms out because he's frustrated because he's a football man. Fuck that, dude. No way. No way. You can't do that. That's not something an owner. Do you know how hard they come down on players for like tiny things? So what should happen to this guy? I think he should be suspended. I think he should be suspended for a good chunk of next season as the owner of the team. There is this perception that the owners in the NFL, this billionaire class of owner, there is a perception now that there really hadn't been in years past, that they're evil. David Tepper has been, the guy in Jacksonville has been dragged. The guy in Carolina has been dragged. So this is a real big problem for the league. So the league's got to come down on this owner. But again, it's one of them leagues where the commissioner who is going to come down on David Tepper works for the owners. This same as baseball, but I guess maybe in NFL, the league has a bit more power than, say, in basketball. Because in basketball, it's really the owners control the commissioner. Football, kind of the same. This will probably be the extent, the severity of whatever happens to David Tepper is going to come down to how he gets along with the other NFL owners. If the other NFL owners are worried that this kind of behavior, could be something they would fall victim to, and then suddenly they're setting a precedent now for how many games they're going to, then they'll take care of them. But if the rest of the NFL owners think this guy's a D-bag, this is not This singular incident is not the kind of thing they're gonna take his franchise. No, that's not what he did. There is not a violation that would put in jeopardy a $4 billion business at this point. I don't know what NFL franchises cost, but didn't Denver go for 6? So Carolina's got to be at least 4. Yeah, I don't know. But man, what just awful behavior. What a piece of garbage that guy is, David Tepper. He doesn't know shit about football. He's destroying the hearts and souls of the fans of the Carolina Panthers down there, all because he thinks he knows best. He's going to get Frank Reich, and he's not going to listen to Frank Reich about what quarterback they should take. He's going to take the one that the ESPN idiots all say, he's generational. Same idiots who are saying that about Caleb Williams, who is absolute garbage. I'll tell you, you know what quarterback impressed me the most? And I'm watching all of these ball games. That Michael Penix Jr., who was always like the 4th or 5th quarterback mentioned in this deep, deep quarterback draft class. Penix Jr. put on a show last night that was what? Anyway, moving on. All right, David Tepper. He's a dick. He's in charge of the Carolina Panthers. He owns them, and he's going to get in trouble from the league. We'll find out. League's got a busy week, man. We've got some quite severe referee problems in the NFL. And I'm not just talking about, the situation with the Cowboys and the Lions. I'm talking about just unbelievable bad. I play catcher. I don't argue balls and strikes. You can't. You just got to accept that it's going to be good and it's going to be bad. So I don't typically get upset at officiating or refs. But man, we've seen games changed this year because refs blew calls, because refs screwed shit up. Me personally, I'm getting tired of seeing Justin Fields not get any personal foul calls against him. Everybody is smacking him around on the ground. All these frustrated guys chasing him around. When they finally get him, they're taking extra shots, and not one flag has been thrown. Real egregious one the other day, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're just talking about in general, how the refs have been just robots. We need robots. Everything needs to be reviewable. Let's do that. Let's get it right. Let's get it absolutely right. Here's a fun story. Well, I don't know if this is a fun story. It's fun for me. It's fun if you're Gen X. Do you guys remember, does the name Steve Sanders mean anything to you? If you're Gen X, it probably will, although it may not, ring a bell instantly. You'll be like, Steve Sanders. Did I go to school with Steve Sanders? We all went to school with a Steve Sanders. Steve Sanders is, of course, the character portrayed by Ian Ziering on 90210. Beverly Hills 90210. Ian Ziering. I don't know what happened to him. Like, remember, he was like, I think we always knew that Ian Ziering, he wasn't going to be George Clooney, right? He was funny as Steve, because Steve was an a-hole, and we all knew an a-hole Steve in high school. And, he became the lovable a-hole because he was just such an a-hole, and he meant well. He was just arrogant, and, He met his comeuppance more than once. So, there was a vulnerability to Steve. But anyway, my point is this. No one was like, Ian Ziering's going to be the next Cary Grant. There wasn't that. Nobody ever, at least I didn't. And, he didn't have anything else. After 90210 went off the air, he was smart. He married like some super hot chick. Remember Nikki Ziering? He married her. She changed her name because he was Steve Sanders and it was hot and it was 1993. And she's like, I'm just a stripper. I may as well marry. And then suddenly she's like on tabloids and they're together and they're a hot couple. And then 90210 goes off the air and, that's it for both of them. I don't know what happened. Nikki Ziering got Steve Sanders from, these are like the two Club MTV dancers. Nikki Ziering got Steve Sanders from 90210, Ian Ziering, and what's her name? Camille Grammer got Kelsey Grammer. Camille Grammer did better. Kelsey Grammer had deeper pockets. Anyway, Ian Ziering, Steve Sanders, he's apparently still alive, although almost got his ass handed to him the other day. Ian Ziering was involved in a road rage fight on the streets of Los Angeles. And it is a doozy. It is awesome. So we're going to watch this. Here's what I'm going to tell you about it. Ian Ziering was driving in his, what kind of car? It looks like he's got a Mercedes SUV. So, okay. So maybe he can still make supermarket openings and stuff like that. He'll probably do it personal. So he's still got a nice car. He's driving down what looks to be Hollywood Boulevard in Los Angeles, California, and he's surrounded by a bunch of people on motorcycles. Nay, I'm not going to say motorcycles. We're going to call them bikes, okay? Because when bikers, like I've seen this headline go, Ian Ziering attacked by bikers. Some of these dudes were on mini bikes, like ning, 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 like they weren't exactly like bikers, like you think Hell's Angels. So here's what happens. He's driving down in his nice little Mercedes. He gets surrounded. They come to traffic. I guess words are exchanged. Ian Ziering institutes this whole thing. Ian Ziering jumps out of his car. And by the way, let me tell you, he looks great. He still looks exactly like Steve Sanders from 90210. You can't miss him. Ian Ziering jumps out of his Mercedes SUV and he seems to do this weird kick thing at one of the bikers, like, get out of my way. He kicks the biker. The biker fights back. Then, like 50 bikers all get involved. And again, I call them bikers, not so much Sons of Anarchy, as much as like Sons of, I don't know. Anyway, here, let's see this. I'll bring this up so we'll watch the video. We'll break it down if we can. I'm not sure how. All right, boom. There we go. All right. Here we go. Let's watch Steve Sanders, Ian Ziering from 90210 get into a fist fight on the streets of LA. Here we go. Okay. Oh, I hate this. All right, there's this guy. That's the silver one. See it right here? This is him right here in the silver. I hate that. He's going to jump out crazy. Oh, now he's just going to run into. Oh, he's taking a woman. And now they're all just. Oh, here he goes. Run, Steve Sanders, run. Look at him go. Look at him go. Yeah. Oh, he makes it back.
Watch the car, watch my car.
That's Steve Sanders, 90210. Let's see if we can lose so many bikes. Exactly, bikers. All right, let's watch this again. Here he is right here in the silver one. He's going to come running out. Oh, here he comes. Oh, here he is. Boom! He throws the first punch. Now he's going at it. Now he gets run from behind. Now he's punching a woman. Whoa! He just got jacked out. One dude connected, hit him in the face. Jeez. Wow! That was a dream maker.
Watch the car, watch my car. Not the last.
Oh. Guys, life is so fun. That's fun. Now that's fun. Steve Sanders, Ian Ziering getting jumped by a bunch of bikers on the streets of LA. Hey man, look, I've watched that like a half dozen times now. He started it. Well, I don't know what like were they John, but he's the one who pulled over. He's the one who jumped out of his vehicle, and he's the one that when he struck another dude, the dude he struck was still on a bike. He was getting off the bike, but Ian Ziering, and then he got surrounded, and they started taking. It's hysterical. I don't know what that was about. He's okay. If you're worried about Steve Sanders, aka Ian Ziering, worry no more because he is fine. Also, some big news. Oh boy, I saw this trending on Sunday, and I'm like, what is going on with this? Green Day. Green Day made some news over the weekend. Apparently, they played Dick Clark's New Year's Rockin' Eve. Dick Clark's been dead for 50 years. I wasn't watching because I was tuned into CBS where they were playing Jack Benny's Rockin' New Year's Eve. It's been going on since the 1950s. Seriously, Dick Clark's New Year's Rockin' Eve, please. Can you just put a little respect on Seacrest and just call it Ryan Seacrest's New Year's Rockin' Eve? You don't have to keep going back to Dick Clark. I watched CNN's coverage. I watched a little bit of CNN's coverage. Because why not? Why not? Every year I like to remind myself why nobody trusts CNN anymore as a legitimate news source. And I believe in large part it's because of their antics on New Year's Eve for the last 10 years. CNN, take us serious 364 days a year and then watch us get fabulous and wasted on New Year's Eve. No. I always wonder what would happen if like a major incident occurred in Times Square on New Year's Eve while Anderson Cooper is doing shots with Andy Cohen. I always wonder like, how do they die? Because at some point after this thing occurred, CNN would go right into their regular, this is breaking news, and they'd have, I don't know, Boris Sanchez back at the studio. And then like 20 minutes would go by and like a half drunk, half New Year's Eve out Anderson Cooper would now be in studio with Jake Tapper. And they'd all have their shirts rolled up. They'd all be drunk. They couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. I hate it. I hate. You know who should do the crazy New Year's Eve thing? E-Network. Is that still a thing? TMZ should do a live crazy New Year's Eve, not CNN. CNN doesn't need to get crazy. It's just one day a year where we let our hair down. You're CNN. You're trying to be respectable. You're trying to regain the trust of the American people who, for whatever reason over the years have been led to believe that you're not exactly as truthful as you could be. Maybe dial back the New Year's Eve and go back to being perceived as a real journalistic entity and not just CNN, the history of comedy. Stop it. Stop it, CNN. You don't know what the fuck you are. Just do news and do it better than anyone else. The way you used to. There was a time when CNN was far and away the most trusted. And then, I don't know what happened. So Green Day did Dick Clark's New Year's Rockin' Eve. I was watching CNN. I didn't see this. I only saw it the next day. And they did their song American Idiot, and they changed it to Don't Wanna Be a MAGA Idiot. And everybody went, oh, really? Oh, you're shocked that, Billy Joe Armstrong might break bad on live TV to give some political... Really? You didn't think that was a possibility? You don't know how Green Day feels about these things? Come on. The whole song, American Idiot, which is their biggest song, which is the one they performed, that song should tell you all you need to know about how Green Day feels about our anesthetized mindset as American citizens. Moving on, Green Day, and again, can't move on quick enough. Really? You're going to be butthurt over that? Bunch of snowflakes. Of course they're like left-wing. They're like left-wing punk rock anarchy. They are not leaders. They're Green Day. Go back to Toby Keith or whatever if that makes you feel better. But, I guess the weird left has that too. And they do it on Green Day. Or they do it on New Year's Eve with Green Day. Dave Chappelle is also trending. He's been trending for 2 days. Dave Chappelle has a brand new Netflix special. I'm going to take a moment here. I watched it on New Year's Eve. Dave Chappelle, the Dreamer, shocked that it was on New Year's Eve. What with, all the powerful outrage from within Netflix. They didn't do nothing. Netflix, you know what? The owners of Netflix, when all those people quit, they were like, good. We had serious redundancy problems here, and I didn't want to fire all of those people. But since they walked out, see you later. Netflix didn't change anything about their support or platforming of Dave Chappelle. Why? Because the rest of the country thinks he's a genius. There are a lot of people. There's some loud people on the left, and there are some loud people on the right who cloud everyone's perceptions of things. Fact of the matter is I would say about 80% of the average American, if you said, is Dave Chappelle funny, they would say very. It's only those of you who completely brand your... Dave Chappelle is a genius. I think he's an absolute genius. Here's my review of The Dreamer. Fearless. He is exactly what comedy needs in 2023. A guy who is not going to play the game. A guy who is just going to stay true to who he's always been and think humorously about impactful issues and then present them to us. That's what he's always done. Anybody who watches Dave Chappelle and listens to these stories and thinks he's a terrible, monstrous individual. No, he's not. He seems very much like Dave Chappelle, the same Dave Chappelle that I loved in 1998. Same Dave Chappelle that I loved in 2003. Same Dave Chappelle he hasn't changed. You have. So holding him to this standard because he is still the same voice that he has always been, a voice that is now considered Mount Rushmore of American comedy quality. He hasn't changed. You have. And thankfully he hasn't. Now, there is a lot of comedy out there that is masquerading as the kind of fearless truth telling that Dave Chappelle does. That is not at all like what Dave Chappelle is doing. Dave Chappelle is doing some high level stuff. There are some comedians out there who are just simply pandering, who now people are like, yeah, Dave Chappelle and Nick DiPaolo should tour. Dave Chappelle and Nick DiPaolo have nothing in common. Nothing in common. Dave Chappelle opened up his comedy, his stand-up comedy set, his new one on Netflix, The Dreamer, after a year of, he was attacked on stage. He did his last couple of specials. He talked about the very contemporary American societal issue of transgenderism, something that people the age of Dave Chappelle and my age were trying to grapple with, trying to understand. It wasn't a thing. I'm glad you're all up to speed and you're all like, this is great and this is fine, and let's act like nothing happened. Some of us have questions. Some of us have respectful questions. Some of us would like you to just at least grant us that you being comfortable as an out trans person is new in society, relatively new. It's progress, and we applaud that. I do. I applaud all forms of social progress. But we got some questions, and just because we ask some questions doesn't mean that we're monsters. We are sick and tired of all being demonized for simply being people who were alive before 1980. This is fucking nuts. Especially if there is a dedication on the part. And I know a lot of people who are like me in this regard. We don't want to get old, and we recognize that getting old means being, I don't like it. So you have to keep an open mind. So you have to start looking at the world, and you have to say to yourself, you know what? This is not my generation anymore. The generation that is setting the taste standards is not mine. And their influences growing up weren't mine. They didn't grow up on MASH and All in the Family and Seinfeld and Friends. They grew up on, I don't know. I don't know. Whatever. I'm just streaming. I'm just ranting right now. But I thought he was fearless. He opened up his comedy special on Netflix after a year of being completely hammered. He opened up with a trans joke. Fearless. And I'm sitting there on the edge of my seat. I'm like, how's he going to open? What's he going to go with? He opened up with a trans joke, and it was so obviously a joke, and there was no victim in the joke, but it was a joke that had to do with the subject of transgenderism. So because of that, and because it was coming out of him first, it was like, wow, he is not going to kowtow to people who are going to tell him how to think, especially if he believes, and I believe he is, especially if he believes he is thinking about these things through the lens of a man who grew up in a different era, but who has an open mind and an open heart, and a Muslim minority immigrant wife, and all of these things. He's going through the intellectual exercises in public on stage. Why? Because the rest of us are doing it as well. Years from now, I am telling you, wrong side of history is something that I always like to say, but years from now, all of you people who are like, it needs to be silenced. All of you people are going to look like fools, because history is going to say, yes, this is what we needed. We needed these teachers who helped us work through it. Dave Chappelle is not saying, let's build camps and round them all up. Okay. Dave Chappelle is not appearing on the Ben Shapiro show and talking about how they all should be, put through some sort of counseling where we can change them back and fix them. He's not doing that. He's simply standing on stage as a modern man going, this is kind of different. Let's talk about it. As I said with the first two specials where he got in trouble, I didn't see any malice in any of it. I saw good-natured fun. I saw joking about something that is a very, very real topic in today's society, and being, like I said, being the conduit for the rest of us who are also of his age group, of his demographic. If you people just want, if every millennial just wants every other generation to die off, here's what I will say to you. Just hang on. That's going to happen. And you're going to be the ones who are completely in charge. And guess what? Gen Alpha is coming for your ass. It all comes around. So stop it. Have an open mind. Understand that not everybody is a hateful monster. Some of us just grew up in a different era. Some of us are just struggling to be good people in 2024. And we recognize that we have to change. And I think that's what we see in Dave Chappelle. There was no hatred. There was no anger. Now, there was anger at the backlash. See, and I think this is where people are getting confused. He was very mean in those jokes about trans people. No, trans people was the subject. His anger was at the way he was responded to, the way that he was treated, the way that people couldn't handle him talking this way. And me, I happen to agree with him. I think that he feels he said nothing wrong, nothing mean, nothing cruel. He also did a really funny thing where he came out and he said, so I'm not doing trans anymore. He said, this whole show is going to be about me making fun of handicapped people. And Dave Chappelle went into a 5-10 minute bit and he kept calling back to it where he made fun of handicapped people. And it was spectacular. You know why? Because it wasn't making fun of a handicapped person who can't do things. It was acknowledging that handicapped people are out there and that we encounter them all the time and that this is what life must be like for them. It's like I always say, if I run into a guy, if I meet a guy and he's got one arm, the very first thing I ask him is, what happened to your arm? Dave Chappelle, I think, although, look, who am I to speak? But the way Dave Chappelle did that, I think it was more inclusive to handicapped people who have been completely off limits for everything. Oh, you can't even mention the handicapped person. He included them in humor. And it wasn't mean. It was just what it's like to be handicapped, It's not like, oh, man, you're an idiot. No, it was, this is a reality. It was well done. It was so well done. And he was doing it to say to people, you're too stupid to really see what I'm getting at. I'm being inclusive here. It doesn't have to be mean just because. I thought it was great. He's getting, of course, a lot of backlash because he mentioned transgenderism. And then after he mentioned transgenderism, he didn't go on a 10-minute soliloquy about how it's the greatest thing and it's going to save humanity, blah, blah, blah. That's why he's being punished. He talked about the subject of transgenderism again, without malice, humorously. Are you telling me? I would suggest watch it. I'm not looking at the chat room because I know Adam Reyna is just, and I don't want to do that because anybody who thinks that I have a problem with trans people and that I would, support people who are voting to restrict their rights and all of that as citizens. Anybody who thinks that about me is just a stupid person who doesn't know me. And anyone who thinks that about Dave Chappelle based upon the body of work that he has created over the years, anybody who doesn't know that Dave Chappelle is pretty goddamn liberal, anybody who doesn't know that just hasn't been paying attention. And you're cherry picking things to be outraged about. And I think that's what's happening with Dave Chappelle. Again, 20 years from now, people are going to be like, man, do you remember the barren wasteland of comedy where everybody was afraid to go places, where everybody was afraid to talk about the actual world? Remember when that was a problem? Yeah, thank God we had Dave Chappelle. That's honestly the way I think he's going to be viewed. All of you people outraged by it, you were the same people who were outraged by Lenny Bruce. You were the same people who were outraged by Richard Pryor's 7 Dirty, or George Carlin's 7 Dirty Words, or even Richard Pryor's drug content. Oh, history. History now applauds the fact that we had these people talking about these things in that way, a way that is accessible to the average person, and not a way that's being discussed by doctors and PhDs on Sunday morning shows. No. Real conversation for real people about a very, very new issue that is being thrown at us from all angles, and we're all dealing with it, and that's fine. Life changes. The world changes. All right, moving on. A couple of people died. We got to talk about the dies. We had some deaths. The last day of the year, it's always very common, the last day of the year. New Year's Eve, if you will. We always get a couple of big ones. We always get oh no, they died. So we got a couple here. These were the last. I don't know who the last person to die in 2024. And by that, I mean, who cares who the last person to die? The last person to die in 2024 may have been a dude who fell out of a tree in Bali, right? Who cares? I'm talking about celebrities. Who's the last notable celebrity to pass away? Cal Yarborough. He died on Saturday or Sunday, maybe. I think it was Saturday. Cal Yarborough, NASCAR, IndyCar racing. He's a race car guy. He's a race car legend. Cal Yarborough, great racing name. He died. Also, Shecky Green. Shecky Green died. Do you know who Shecky Green is? Shecky Green, I've always been kind of interested in because he gets name checked a lot. It's probably the hackiest comedy name of all time. And, in comedy, so I don't guess I haven't heard it recently, but I remember back like years ago, if somebody was hacky, they wouldn't call you a hack. They would just say, good one, Shecky. They'd call you a Shecky. Is he any good? He's a bit of a Shecky. And that meant that you were hack. That meant that you weren't doing anything interesting in comedy. Well, Shecky Green unfortunately died. It's like 115. No, I think he was like 97 or something like that. Shecky Green is an old comedian from the 1950s and 1960s. One of these guys, right? One of these. Oh, I'll tell you. And then it's, hey, but sure, hey. He's one of these guys. But he's often mislabeled as a Borscht Belt comedian. The Borscht Belt was a comedy tour. The Borscht Belt are a bunch of resorts in the upstate New York mountains that catered exclusively to wealthy New York and Connecticut and New Jersey Jewish families. And they would go to these places. Dirty Dancing. There you go. Dirty Dancing is set at one of these places. They all went there for the summer and all that. Okay, so we know what that is now. That's the Borscht Belt. The Borscht Belt are all of these different resorts that would have showrooms, and different comics would go up and down the Borscht Belt. Shecky Green is often considered like the king of the Borscht Belt, but he never did the Borscht Belt. Shecky Green was a different kind of comedian. Shecky Green was a mob comic. Now the Borscht Belt, that was not mob comedy. The Borscht Belt was very, very Jewish New York and Connecticut money culture, bankers, very proper society. Shecky Green was a dude who was, he started out as a comic in Chicago. He was playing at a club that was run by the mob. The mob opened another club in Miami, so they sent him down there. Then the mob started getting into Vegas, so they opened a club in Vegas, and they sent Shecky there, and Shecky stayed in Vegas for like 40 years. But he was never a Borscht Belt guy. He was a mobbed up, he was a mobbed up bad stand-up comedian, and he died over the weekend. Shecky Green. There you go. Shecky Green and Cal Yarborough. He was like 90 something. He appeared. Here's the thing. He never became a megastar, but it's like he was in the business so long that many of his contemporaries did. So his contemporaries would have TV shows and movies, and they would cast their old buddy Shecky. So that's kind of how Shecky got famous. But really, he was just a Vegas lounge comedian for like 50 years. Shecky Green. What else do we have? Yeah, let's see. I was going to get into this about. Do we want to get into this about Edwin Castro? I found an interesting. Oh no, we'll do this one. Mental hospitals. Mental hospitals. There's a whole generation of people that don't know what these mental hospitals are. I remember them. I remember mental hospitals when I was a kid. Not because I ever went to them, but because I lived in a town that had a massive mental hospital. Tinley Park Mental Hospital was like a big federal mental, what we used to call the loony bin, what we used to call, prison for crazy people, or just, permanently wigged out people with mental problems that need to be confined. They can't be out in public. So that was a thing. And where I grew up, the town had a very large mental institution, a very big one, very, very big one. Like within the national scale of mental institutions, Tinley Park Mental was a very big one. But they all were closed down. And for the past 35 years, this gigantic plot of land at, what is that, like 183rd and Harlem in Tinley Park is now just this abandoned, overgrown wasteland. No lawns have been cut in 30 years. So it's this campus. It looks like a junior college. It's this campus of what was formerly a mental institution that is just creepy as hell now because it's all overgrown. They were closed. Reagan closed them. Reagan closed all the mental institutions back in the 80s because 80s conservatives, not unlike the ones today, 80s conservatives believed that the most dependent and vulnerable in our communities are best served by those communities themselves. The churches will open up their doors and the churches will welcome, and good Christians will open up their doors and they will give that spare bedroom to a man in their community who has severe schizophrenia. Yeah, no. So they closed all these down. They're trying to save money. Well, I get it. You close it down. So we basically just disassembled our national system of caring for these people. And what happened next? Homeless people. This is the birth of the homeless crisis in America. When we emptied the mental institutions, all of these people went and started living on the streets. It turns out these mental institutions was the reason why we still had these charming nicknames for, homeless people. We called them bums. We called them hobos. We'd catch them hopping the rails. They weren't living in tents in the parking lot behind the liquor store on Main Street the way they started to in the 1980s, because the mental hospitals were all opened up. This is where comic relief comes from. The comedians, it was the massive rise in homeless populations in America's biggest cities after the mental institutions were all ended. Well, guess what? They're coming back. And guess who's bringing it back this time? The same people who closed them up. Yeah, the conservatives are now like, we need these mental. You know what? We were wrong. The churches are not going to take care of these people. The good Christians in our communities are not going to open up their spare bedrooms to the guy with schizophrenia who used to live in the weeds behind the school. Nope, that didn't work. So now 35 years later, people are all, ooh, homeless are so gross. And now we got to do something about it. So now we're going to put them in, we're going to house them again. Going to house them because we just can't kill them yet. I don't know. As a country, we're like moving into that direction. I can see 50 years from now. Absolutely. Is it possible that there's like mass assassinations or mass murder of homeless people? Sure. I mean, look, I don't want to be a dark daisy here, but we're heading in some nasty directions is all I'm saying. We're mean people. We're a mean, cruel people. The linked crises of drug addiction and homelessness have Washington on the verge of embracing a healthcare provider it once repudiated, the mental hospital. Nearly 60 years after Congress barred Medicaid from treating people in what were then derided as insane asylums, lawmakers are on the verge of reversing course. So what they decided was they tried to help. So back in the 1960s, you were just, oh, he's a crazy person. We had absolutely no regard for what's going on in people's minds. None. Head shrinkers. That's what psychiatrists were. Therapy. I ain't going to therapy. I'm a real man. No, you're a real fucked up man, but okay, whatever. It's 1967. Get drunk, beat your wife, act like everything's normal. So there was a very sort of cynical, not even cynical, mocking attitude towards mental health. And because of that, they looked at these mental hospitals that were taking care of these, crazy people. And they were like, you know what? Maybe those crazy people ought to just stop acting like that and get back to work. The good old American way. And that was the attitude. Because remember, there was no thought put into this. We didn't think anything about this. We do now, thankfully. So we're in a time now where we understand that people's brains are, dependent on chemistry and, different sort of influences. And now we've also got this crazy drug problem where it's not just crazy people that are living on the street, but it's people who are destitute because they're addicted to back medication or, Nearly 60 years after Congress barred Medicaid from treating people in what were then derided as insane asylums, lawmakers are on the verge of reversing course. The reasons: community-based care. Oh, here you go. This is what I was telling you about. Community-based care, championed since the 1960s, hasn't stopped record overdoses, and constituents have had it with the brazen drug use and tent encampments in their communities. We didn't take care of them. That's what we were sold. You're American. It's like 1967. You're Americans. You can be counted on to pick your brother up off the ground, dust him off, give him a ham sandwich, and point him in the right direction because you're Americans. And that's what we're going to do with all of these. We didn't do any of it. The churches didn't open up their door. Some did, but they didn't to the degree that we needed. People didn't open up. People didn't get involved in their communities and taking care of the most vulnerable. We didn't. And we shouldn't be expected to. We're just trying to get through our own life. But for the grace of God, go us, running down our block, naked, banging pots and pans, going, woo, I'm a fairy, or whatever, right? We're all just like that from snapping. We've seen it. We've seen people just snap. So let's take care of these people. That's what I think anyway. It's no longer the 1960s, and there is no longer the same stigma against the treatment of mental health, said GOP Rep. Michael Burgess, a doctor representing Dallas's affluent northern suburbs who oh yeah, they're angry up there in Frisco. They don't like the homeless people up there in Frisco. So that's where this guy is, Michael Burgess, Dr. Michael Burgess. We need to reopen the mental institutions. Well, look, I'm all for it. I don't mean to be, I just think that his motivation is more, ew, they're gross, than, hey, let's help them. But that's me. I'm a cynic when it comes to political motivations. So yeah, so there you go. So you got a big GOP congressman up there in Frisco. He's like behind this bill. He's trying to push it. He wants to get our mental institutions back open. The House passed December 12th. But it is no longer the 1960s, and there's no longer the same stigma about mental health treatment. A doctor representing Dallas's affluent northern suburbs who sponsored a House bill to change the rule. The House passed it on December 12th. It would give states the option to treat Medicaid patients suffering from addiction for up to a month in a mental hospital on the government's dime. The Senate Finance Committee approved a similar provision in November, so its prospects of enhancement are good. Okay, so whatever. It's a slippery slope. A slippery slope slippery slope is always used in a negative way, but couldn't it be a slippery slope to something good? Because I think a real concerted effort by us to take care of our brothers and sisters who are in trouble. I think a real concerted effort. What are you, a communist? I'm a communist. By the way, tip the show, because this show is all about capitalism. God bless America. I know communist. I just think we need to be, especially if we're going to call ourselves Christians. I don't call myself a Christian. I'm a seeker. But I know a whole bunch of you call yourselves Christians. So maybe just, don't want to go into that. Never mind. We're going to move on. Edwin Castro is also trending today. Edwin Castro. Now, do you guys remember Edwin Castro? I do. God, this guy. He's awesome. I kind of love him. Edwin Castro is the dude in California, the mechanic who bought the lottery ticket last year that was worth $2 billion. Oh, my God. Now, I've gotten to know quite a bit about Edwin Castro over the last, because every time I see his name trending, something, I click on it, and it's always something awesome. Like, he's always doing something. So here's a dude. Let's talk about who Edwin Castro is, just so you know, because he's what is he doing now? He is he's trying to build a car restoration empire. He's putting he's got $2 billion, and he was a mechanic, and so he's trying to, Anyway, point is this. Let's talk about this dude, because he won $2 billion. And, I saw him, the first time I saw him, I'm like, oh, he looks like a landscaper, like a dude who, the guys who come and figure, he looks like a working man. He looks like I don't even know if he looks like someone who I would assume would speak English because, like I said, he looks like, but he does. Here's the thing. He's awesome. Like this dude. Okay. So again, his name is Edwin Castro. He won $2 billion. He's awesome. First of all, he was a straight A student in high school. Too poor to go to college, so he ended up, working with his hands. But he was a straight A honor roll student in high school. He was an all-state football player in high school. Yeah, he was the prom king of his high school. He was also the class treasurer. Pretty good because he's got $2 billion. He was also the class treasurer of his high school. So my point is this. Let's go back to this very formulative point in a person's life. During this period of time, he wasn't just wearing jean jackets and smoking by the bike racks. No, he was a good kid. He was doing shit. Oh yeah. Can I also mention this? He's a highest degree. I don't know what it is. They said whatever degree it is. Eagle Scout. This dude, Edwin Castro, was an Eagle Scout as a kid. That means he had good parents. He was forced to do something really dorky for 17 years, but later in life, it looks good. Nobody wants to be in the Eagle Scout program at 15 unless you're a dork. It's a very nerdy kind of thing. However, you put that on a resume as 30 and people are like, he could be president. He was an Eagle Scout. It's not really appreciated. It's dorky. I always thought the Scouts were so dorky. But I respect somebody who can matriculate through that system and achieve a high rank of Eagle Scout. Anyway, this is who this guy is. And I mentioned this about him because I think that I may have judged a book by its cover. I think I looked at him and I was like, oh, this guy's going to blow his money hiring Santana to play parties every week. You know, I thought like that. No, this dude is apparently pretty sharp. He's bought he makes the news every once in a while because he buys a lot of houses, but he's also, you know, it's real estate. He seems to be doing smart things. So anyway, there's a big story about him in this new like auto restoration empire that he's trying to get started. And I just thought it was interesting because I read it and then I was like, you know what? This is because we look at these things when these lottery winners win and then they start to do things with the money and we all go, he's going to blow that, you know, like the dude, I'm going to buy a titty bar, you know, and now that money's gone. No, this guy seems to be like doing really smart things. So a round of applause for my new friend, Edwin Castro. He's dressing funny though. He's dressing funny. This is the only thing that I'll say about Edwin Castro. There's all these pictures of him. Again, Edwin Castro won $2 billion in the California State Lottery last year. So he's got like a different car for every day of the week. And why not? Did you hear? He won $2 billion. So there's all these, and he loves classic cars. Like he seems to really love vintage 1970s Porsches because that's what he's always driving around in. But there are also these pictures of him walking down the street, and you see them like Edwin Castro walking down the street before he was worth $2 billion, and then Edwin Castro walking down the street worth $2 billion. It's just funny because the before, he was wearing flip-flops and basketball shorts and, you know, an Adidas t-shirt and a Dodger cap, you know, just walking down the street like a normal dude. And then there's like $2 billion Edwin Castro. He's wearing like what looked to be like men's Lululemon yoga pants. He has these really nice, like, they look brand new because he's probably got 50 pairs of like Nike Air Jordans. So he's got those. And then he's wearing this like really funny Eurotrash leather jacket that probably costs like 10 grand. And it's just kind of a weird kind of look. He's trying to figure out what his look is. I understand that. You know, sometimes I'll tell you this, Edwin, sometimes just because it's expensive doesn't mean it's nice. That leather jacket you were wearing was tacky as hell. Let's get you're Edwin Castro. Get yourself a Dodgers jersey. Get yourself a really nice Dodgers jacket. That's what we want from you. You know, you don't have to try and be, you know, Serge from Macedonia in a disco in Paris. That's kind of how you were dressed. That's not who you are. Edwin Castro. I like him. There was also a rant here I was going to do on refs but we kind of touched on it. The Cowboys lost that game. Now, look, I know a whole bunch of things that preceded that, and I am an NFC North guy. So let me just tell you, F the Lions. This has nothing to do with the Lions. In fact, it brought me great joy to know that Detroit Lion fans had a really bad night Saturday night. I'm certainly more aligned with the Cowboys and the Cowboys' good fortune. But guys, can we be honest? Can we be honest? That ref made a mistake. Okay, so let's just move on. I don't know. Is Detroit going to make a big deal of it? They just move on. Just ugh. What else? Was there a ref issue in the football game last night? Texas, Washington. Jeez, I really thought Texas was going to win that game. And then they started playing, and I'm like, oh, okay. Washington just outplayed them. Michael Penix Jr. I had not seen any Michael Penix Jr. Sorry, I don't stay up till 2:00 watching Pac-10 football at 2:00 in the morning on ESPN 5. I wasn't really all that familiar with Michael Penix. But man, did he look great. Jaden Daniels, I'm familiar with Jaden Daniels. Of course, your Heisman winner. Caleb Williams, of course, I'm familiar with him. Drake May, familiar with him. But yeah, and also, JJ McCarthy from Michigan looked good too. So we've got a national championship game that's now set. It's going to be between the University of Michigan, Jim Harbaugh, and going up against the University of Washington Huskies. I don't know. These are two very not going to say similar teams offensive. They're similar teams in the way they play football. These are two smash mouth teams that'll get after you. Your Texas, your Alabamas, these are more razzle dazzle teams that just have so much recruited talent that they should be able to blow anybody up. But then you get these teams like the Washington Huskies have always been that, a smash mouth team. I always think of the Husky teams of Steve Empman going back. All right, look, now I'm talking about draft picks from 30 years ago that came out of obscure Washington Husky football programs. Be a good game next week, national championship. Number 1 versus number 2. So the rankings got that right? Number 1 versus number 2. Number 1 Michigan taking on number 2 Washington. It's a shame. I was, thought it would be fun to have Texas in there, but nope. All right. Now I would like to do the final story of the day. This is a very exciting one, and I'm going to have to spend a little moment here. Want to make sure that I get this right. Okay. Oh, and by the way, support the show if you can. I don't think we got any tips today. I didn't hear it go off. So, we need to figure out a way to raise $300 by the end of the month, or, we're not going to make it again. But there you go. Anything you can do to get us to that point, drop a little something. Here you go. Now, the Radio Misfits show, as you remember it, the 9:00 show with myself and James Parker. We haven't been doing it for a couple of weeks. We took a little bit of time off. I'm comfortable at this moment explaining to you what was going on there. First, and this is the primary thing, this was a very big issue, came out of nowhere, and it is the initial reason why we stopped doing those shows. James Parker had a child who got very sick, details of which he can share. Very sick, hospital sick. James was in the hospital for a week straight. There's a positive outcome to that. I believe, again, I don't want, right. Okay. So I believe that situation is on the mend. Okay. That's why we stopped doing the shows. He could, obviously, right? I'm not going to be like, no, dude, you said you'd do this stupid trick. He had more important things going on with his family. And again, I'd say it's his kid, so I don't want to give details out, but he had a sick kid. And it was a very legit reason. And should you find time to speak with him, you can ask him. But I was very concerned for a period of time. Not anymore. Not to you, that family. My God, they went through hell the last 3 weeks. So keep a good thought for them. They went through something no family, no parent should go through, where a situation is as touch and go as it was. And it was thankfully, like I said. Now, the second part of that, let me read something to you. Okay. So this is, I've known about this now for a couple of weeks, but you got to keep it quiet. You can't talk about it. Breaking news. This is out of Barrett Media News Updates. WBAP adding FM simulcast on 93.3. Hey, that's my old stomping ground. 93.3. That was the bone when we were there. My worst experience in my 20, almost 31 year radio life. Whew. The bone, terrible. 93.3. They're simulcasting WBAP, which is one of those AM talk stations, with those kinds of people. So they're gonna simulcast that over on 93.3. WBAP adding FM simulcast on 93.3 in Dallas, announces new afternoon show. What? Huh? As we move into a critical election year, these talent moves and an FM frequency for WBAP speak to our commitment to the spoken word form of radio. WBAP has announced that the station will add an FM simulcast on 93.3 KLIF FM in the Metroplex on Wednesday. As we move into a critical election year, these talent moves and FM frequency for WBAP speak to our commitment to spoken word radio, said Cumulus Dallas Vice President Dan Bennett. I love Dan. I like Dan. Dan, the worst experience in radio was overseen by Dan Bennett, and I don't blame Dan for any of it. Like, that was a trash company back when I worked for him. I'm sure everything's fixed. I'm sure everything's fine now. Let's see here. We will carry our stations on a variety of signals and streaming to improve accessibility, blah, 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 blah. The KLIF signal is a 50,000 watt. Okay, we don't need this. Here's the real news. In addition to the new FM simulcast, the station has also officially announced the addition of Carla Marion to co-anchor WBAP's morning news alongside Hal J. and Ernie Brown. Additionally, James Parker has been hired and joined WBAP as afternoon drive host, helming a program from 2 to 5 p.m. Parker is a native Texan who has spent time working in New Orleans and most recently in Tyler, Texas. The time slot was previously hosted by Rick Roberts, who exited the station in August. Round of applause and a big whoo. It's a long trudge for James Parker. WBAP. That is really, it's 2 to 5. He's going to be on 2 to 5 in the afternoon. Great hours. He's got a hell of a commute. He's going to be commuting from Tyler to WBAP here in Victory Plaza in Dallas every single day. I'm sure there will be a few opportunities for him to crash on my couch and all of that good stuff. But this is just an absolutely amazing opportunity for him. This is terrific. WBAP here in Dallas, they've been around for a long time, and they are picking up the FM signal. They're going to go from an AM station. This is good too, because AM signals are. This tells me when the AM stations start buying the FM signals, it tells me that they're not giving up on that form of radio. It's just they're giving up on AM as a means of distribution because, first of all, electric cars don't have AM bands. Like if you've got an electric car, you do not have a band for AM radio because the electric car industry claims that AM bands amplitude modulation interferes with the car's electric system. So only FM. That's the only band that you get. So that's going to really hurt AM radio moving forward. So they're moving over to the FMs. James is going to be on 93.3. I don't know if he's on today. Let me see. Yeah. I don't know. All right, we'll figure it out. We will figure it out. But a big round of applause. And just, if you see James, congratulate him, whether you're friends with him on social media or whatever it is. But it's been a long road for both him and me. And although I do not have a big announcement to make yet, my point is this. The Radio Misfits 9 p.m. show is no longer a thing. James can't do it. There's just too much. He can't do it. He can't do it. I am going to create a new 9 o'clock show for the time being. I intend to continue doing all of streaming things, regardless of what happens. I mean, I have things cooking, and hold on, let me plug this back in. And even through that, we're going to continue on with these streams. So there you go. And James is still going to pop around from time to time. He'll still be able to do stuff. But that's why a lot of people were like, well, when you were doing the mornings on the Freak last week and the week before, how come James wasn't with you? Well, that's why. Now you understand. It wasn't personal. I mean, people were like, what, you don't like James anymore? I'm like, please. James would have been right there with me. But, you can't work for iHeart when you've just signed a deal with Cumulus. So that was going on there. So congratulations to him. Congratulations to you. All of us, we've made it through another show. It is 2:10. We went over. I thought we were just going to, I thought this was going to be a short show. I appreciate you. We'll see you tomorrow at high noon again. Again, tip the show if you can. Certainly would appreciate that. We need to raise $300 this week. I have no belief that we are going to make it. It will be the second month that we didn't make it. Last month we came really close. Like last month, we at the end of it last month, we came so close that I was just like, we made it. We're fine. We'll just consider it that we didn't really make it. I mean, I just said that because people tipped, and I wanted to make sure that they knew that I appreciated it. But we didn't quite get there. We didn't quite get there. We're not going to get there again this month, but that's okay. Anything you can do to help these shows going would be greatly appreciated. We'll see you tomorrow. Love you guys. Stay optimistic. Stay hopeful. Try and make somebody smile today. Huh? How about that, right? Like you need this bullshit from me. I hate when Pugs comes and starts preaching to us. No. That's just a little thing I do with my kid. And we count smiles. I say, how many people you make smile today? And he's like, well, I made the girl at the 7-Eleven laugh. I'm like, okay, that's good. And the janitor, I told the janitor that he was doing a good job, and he smiled. All right, that's good. There you go. So we can all do that. Contribute to being better people. 2 hours. Yeah, because I started at about 10 minutes after. 2 hours of a nonstop rant today. I hope you feel like you're prepped up on all the things people are talking about. Got nothing else. Love you guys. See you tomorrow. It's Radio Misfits. I'm Pugs Moran. Bye.